Welcome back to Smug Money, the podcast about feeling good about your money, not just how much you have, but what it does in the world. Today's guest is someone whose work genuinely changes lives. Ray Coyle, CEO of Energise Africa, an investment platform that allows ordinary investors to fund clean energy projects across sub-Saharan Africa, from solar and mini-grids to clean cooking and low-carbon transport. Today's show comes with support from Energise Africa, a specialist investment site based in the UK, where you can invest to support businesses bringing life-changing solar energy to off-grid communities across sub-Saharan Africa. Energise Africa is on a mission to help African clean energy businesses serve their own communities. With an investment of as little as £50, you can help to bring solar energy to people across the sub-Sahara, helping communities to grow and prosper, and aiming to achieve good investment returns too. Hear more about Energise Africa a little bit later this episode. Don't invest unless you're prepared to lose all the money you invest. Ray, welcome to Smug Money. So let's start at the beginning. Tell me a little bit about yourself, if you wouldn't mind. What's your background and how did you end up working at Energise Africa?
Sure. First of all, it's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me on. I'm Ray Coyle. I'm currently the CEO of Energise Africa. I've been in that role for 2 years, and by background, I'm afraid I'm a lawyer. It doesn't make me a bad person, but that's how I started. And I started out as an intellectual property lawyer advising on technology transactions, and went from there into clean tech and got involved in lots of interesting investments in new technology to help fight climate change and help to empower the green transition. And then got involved in advising on renewable energy transactions and ultimately renewable energy transactions in emerging markets. So prior to joining Energise Africa, I've advised on transactions in Ethiopia, Lesotho, Somalia, Burkina Faso. And then the opportunity came up to, rather than just advising on these things, actually do them. So we're now making investments into really, really exciting renewable energy projects all across sub-Saharan Africa. And it's a wonderful job. It has its moments, like they all do, but it's an incredibly satisfying role.
Yeah, I can imagine the impact is real on the ground impact. So fantastic. And so tell us a little bit more about Energise Africa and exactly, why it was set up and the types of problems that you are trying to solve.
Sure. Energise Africa has actually a really interesting history as an organisation. Back in 2017, 2018, the UK government, DFID as it was then, which is now part of the FCDO, decided that there should be a crowdfunding platform in the UK that would enable ordinary people to invest directly in energy access projects in Africa. Mm-hmm. And so they put out a tender to set up Energise Africa. And a number of different organisations bid to set it up. And two of them were a UK business called EthX, which has been around for a long time as a wonderful organisation that raises funds in the UK for community energy projects in the UK. And secondly, a business in Rotterdam called Lenderhand that raises funds for microfinance institutes in Africa. And between them, they had the expertise around renewable energy and microfinance and emerging markets. So they put together a joint venture, which was Energise Africa. And Energise Africa went on to get support from the FCDO, from P4G, from Good Energies, from Virgin, from lots of UK government initiatives that are trying to address the energy access gap. And just last year, we had a change in ownership. We're now wholly owned by EthX. So we are wholly owned by a UK non-profit social enterprise. Uh-huh.
So I just wanted to ask you a little bit about some of the impacts that Energise Africa has delivered over the almost 10 years that it's been operational. How much money has been invested through the platform to date? And, have you got any examples of the number of people that you've helped or any other impacts that you've calculated?
Sure, Lisa. It's obviously vitally important to us. So these are numbers that we're keeping a pretty close eye on. The amount raised on the platform so far is 47.4 million. We regard that as a key impact figure, not just a financial figure, because getting that money into the hands of African entrepreneurs in order to develop their businesses, develop skills, build their projects and employ people is really, really important. So that is a key impact number for us, not just a financial result. The second thing that we measure is the number of people that have access to clean, affordable, reliable electricity that did not previously have that. And that stands at the moment just above 1.1 million people. And these numbers are on the front page of our website and they're updated daily. And the third thing that we measure is the number of tons of CO2 avoided. And this has to be very carefully calculated on the basis of approved methodologies, so that if we provide a solar lantern, we can work out the number of hours of burning of kerosene lanterns that would avoid, etc., etc. And that figure stands at 731,000 tons of CO2 to date for Energise Africa. And just to put it into context, because I find it really difficult to visualize in my head what a ton of CO2 looks like. It's quite tricky. A household in the UK will generate about 6 tons of CO2 emissions per annum. So 731,000 tons of CO2 represents a lot. The emissions of over 120,000 UK households for a year.
Incredible.
So it's a very significant reduction.
Yeah.
It's not enough, but it's significant.
Yeah. And then you, as we talked about, you've got the other additional social impact benefits that are being delivered through the project's work as well.
Yes, through access to electricity. And that's key to everything that we do, is reducing CO2 emissions, but in the way that has the highest social impact.
So you've told me that around 600 million people in sub-Saharan Africa still live without reliable access to electricity. What does that actually look like on the ground? You know, how does that manifest itself in the way their lives unfold, and why the work that Energise Africa is doing is so impactful?
It's a very good question. Thanks, Lisa. The 600 million number is one that comes up a lot, and I find it really difficult. The fact that number of people in 2026 don't have access to electricity is really horrible and disgraceful.
Yeah.
And I looked back at some of the early documents from when Energise Africa was set up, and early presentations and investor documentation we put together. And back then the figure was 580 million. And a huge amount of money and time and effort has been put in to getting people access to electricity. But the population is actually growing faster than we address the problem. So in a way, we're going backwards. So an awful lot more effort is required here to address this problem. And it isn't a problem that should exist in the 21st century.
Yeah.
The way in which, to get back to your question, the way in which that manifests itself on the ground. In most areas that we work in, broadly speaking, the sun comes up at 6 a.m. and goes down at 6 p.m. It's pretty much a 12-hour day. So at 6 p.m. in the evening, it's dark. It gets dark pretty suddenly. And once it gets dark, the streets become less safe, and certainly feel less safe for young people, for women who are out and about. Businesses that don't have access to electricity, cafes, shops, restaurants, have to close because they can't operate in the dark. Kids can't do homework, can't study. People who are doing work from home can no longer do any of that work.
Yeah.
Basically, most things just shut down when it gets dark. People do turn to diesel generators for electricity because you've got to have some access to power. There are about 6 million diesel generators in sub-Saharan Africa, all pumping out CO2 and all incredibly inefficient, noisy, smelly, polluting and unhealthy. People turn to kerosene lanterns, which are extremely unhealthy and give off toxic fumes. People turn to charcoal for cooking, which again gives off very, very unhealthy smoke and leads to deforestation, which further increases our climate challenges. So there are huge impacts from a social and from an environmental perspective of people not having access to clean power. And we can see that transform when, for example, a mini grid is installed in a village and suddenly people have got power and people can use electric equipment. People can just charge their phone at home. Having a mobile phone is as important in Africa as it is in the UK.
Yeah.
Very, very difficult to live without. To walk miles to go and charge a phone, people can do it at home. People have got lighting, kids can read books in the evening. It is absolutely transformational. And we have got to a point globally now where access to electricity should be seen as a human right rather than a luxury of the developed world.
Yeah, absolutely. And so why you mentioned the population growth and the challenge that, we're unable to keep up with what's needed to service that growing population. But why else does the problem still exist? And, what are the other barriers to expanding access to clean energy or any energy?
There are a number of reasons that the problem exists, and a lot of those are around historical disadvantage.
Yeah.
Many countries in sub-Saharan Africa did not have the opportunity to develop the transport power infrastructure that European and Western countries had the opportunity to develop in the 19th and 20th centuries. There's been a lack of the wider wealth that is required in order to give people access to electricity. It cost European and Western countries a lot of money to get universal access to electricity. When you look around in the UK and you see the pylons, the cables, the infrastructure that was put in place, that required a huge amount of investment that was possible for wealthy Western nations, but was not possible for emerging market nations.
Yeah.
So that historical disadvantage and lack of the wider wealth and public money available has made it very, very difficult. However, that does present an opportunity, because one of the things that we're struggling with in the UK is that infrastructure is no longer fit for purpose. Mm-hmm. We built a power distribution infrastructure on the assumption that we would have a small number of very large coal-fired power stations like Drax. What we now want is distributed electricity, and the infrastructure just isn't there for it. So we're now having to rebuild and rethink our energy infrastructure. Yeah. There's this huge opportunity in Africa to create now an infrastructure that is right for the energy mix and for the sources of energy that we want. Distributed, solar, renewable energy. And if we can seize that opportunity, then there's potential for emerging markets to leapfrog some of the developed markets and have a much better and more appropriate energy infrastructure than we have. Yeah. The problem is lack of access to capital. Yeah. There is still a lack of access to capital across sub-Saharan Africa because of ongoing disadvantage and poverty. And I don't want people to misunderstand the poverty challenges in lots of Africa. It's not that people can't afford to pay for electricity. Lots of times, in lots of circumstances, people are paying for charcoal, people are paying for kerosene, people are paying for diesel. They can just switch that money and pay for renewable electricity.
Yeah.
That's not the problem. The problem is that exactly like we have here, if you want renewable power, you've got to pay the capital cost up front.
Yeah.
If you want to put solar panels on your house, it's a big upfront capital payment, and then it will save you money over time. If you want to buy an electric car, it costs you more money, but it will save you money over time. It's all about the upfront capital. The vast majority of people across Africa do not have access to that upfront capital. Mm-hmm. They don't have it themselves, but they don't have access to banking, to credit cards, all the kind of things we have. That means that the businesses need to provide the products to people on some form of credit or pay-go system. Yeah. But that means that the businesses supplying the renewable energy need even greater access to capital because it takes them longer to recoup that. And that's the solution that we're trying to provide. That is the problem that we're trying to address. It's not a lack of affordability. It's not the problem of the technology. It's not that there aren't the people and the entrepreneurs and the technicians. It's all there. We just need access to capital. And we in the UK have a lot of capital.
Oh, yeah. Amazing. So, Ray, what Energize Africa funds a range of solutions. So it's not just solar panels, but also clean cook stoves, mini grids, and in some respects, low carbon transport. Can you talk us through some of those different solutions that you are helping provide to those that need it?
Absolutely. So let's start with low carbon transport.
Yeah.
We've funded a number of electric vehicle companies, and you take Rome as an example. They're based in Kenya. They build electric motorbikes, and these are designed in Africa, manufactured in Africa for the African market. So these are motorbikes that are built to take a sometimes worrying number of passengers. They're built to take quite a high payload. If you buy a motorbike in the UK, you don't really expect to have to deliver a washing machine with it. But in Africa, these are used for an entirely different purpose. So these are African motorbikes for the African market.
Yeah.
There are about 30 million Boda Boda riders in Africa. Boda Boda is a motorbike taxi, motorbike delivery, and they are ubiquitous. They're everywhere. So that means there are 30 million predominantly young, predominantly men, predominantly who didn't get access to higher level education, who rely on Boda Boda income. Giving them access to an electric vehicle can increase the amount of money they take home by 60%.
Wow.
Because of the low cost of fuel, the low cost of ownership. That is transformational for an awful lot of the most vulnerable people across Africa financially. When I'm down in Kenya, we have an office in Nairobi, so I go there regularly, and I tend to get around by Boda Boda, and I try and take the time to stop and talk to people, and they like the electric bikes, they like the fact that they're quieter, they like the fact that they don't pollute.
Yeah.
But what they really, really care about is it changes their income.
Yeah.
And it dramatically increases their income. And that is the societal change that we really want to drive forward. We also fund, as I said, mini grids. And for those that don't know, a mini grid is it's a small solar power station. So it could be anything up to the size of a football field. Sometimes they're much smaller. And it's standalone, so it powers a village or a couple of villages. And there'll be the solar panels, inverters to convert the electricity, and batteries so that people have got access to electricity after the sun goes down. And these are really important for development in Africa because this is the distributed renewable energy that we all know is the best way to do things.
Yeah.
Create the electricity near where it's needed, no high voltage pylons, big power infrastructure, just a village that has a mini grid and that the people in the village can control and can expand when they need more power. Very, very impactful. So we fund organizations to construct the grids. We provide them with construction finance. Frequently there are grants available, and then they repay us when the construction is completed and the grant pays out. And we funded 9 grids so far in Burkina Faso, and we've probably got another 20 or 30 in the pipeline for this year. And they transform villages. It's amazing to go back and see street lighting, to hear electric mills, to see fridges in cafes, and see people being able to use electric water pumps rather than hand pumps. It transforms villages.
Literally life-changing. Yeah.
Very, very much so. And then for people who are in more isolated areas, solar home systems are more important. And this is just a standalone system that a solar panel goes on a roof, a battery goes in the house, and then there are a small number of power outlets. These are really important for the hardest to reach people.
Yeah.
And finally, clean cooking is vitally important. There are vast numbers of people across sub-Saharan Africa that still use charcoal for cooking because charcoal stoves are very cheap, very readily available.
Yeah.
And of course, charcoal is the most readily available and cheapest fuel for people. But it leads to an enormous number, millions of excess deaths every year through unhealthy fumes. It leads to a very, very high level of CO2 emissions.
Yeah.
And it leads to deforestation.
Yeah.
So just providing people with clean cook stoves can address all of those problems in one step. And again, the challenge is capital. If a clean cook stove, a really high quality clean cook stove might cost $100, but it will save the user that $100 over the first year because the fuel is cheaper and they'll save an awful lot of the fuel.
Yeah, and the health impacts as well, I guess.
The health impacts are huge. And also quality of life impacts.
Yeah.
If you're cooking indoors with a smoky charcoal stove, it makes everything smell, it makes everything sooty, it makes everything discolored. Having a clean, smokeless cook stove improves people's quality of life. So it's another one of those areas where the solution is really straightforward and really easy and is readily available, but people don't have the capital in order to invest for the future.
Which is where we come in, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that actually is quite a nice kind of shift into the conversation, I guess, about why this matters to UK investors and how UK investors can get involved. You know, if it sounds of interest to our Smug Money listeners, impact investing, and here you're talking, as you say, really simple solutions, but huge impacts, not only the direct impact, but the co-benefits as well, just transforming societies, hugely impactful. But it can still feel quite abstract when you're, I guess, sat behind your screen or your phone or here in the UK. So how can it really make a difference, and why must we continue to seek out additional impact when we are investing?
I think the really important thing with impact investing is to enable people to genuinely see where their money has gone and genuinely see what their money has achieved. One of the problems that I've seen over many, many years involved around the impact investing scene is that there are lots and lots of funds that try and attract people's money, and lots of them do great stuff and invest in really fantastic projects, and it can be a great way to put your money to work in an impactful way. But the problem is, as you say, it's a little bit abstract. So if I give my money to a fund, I don't know exactly where my money then goes. I know that the fund invests in lots of different things, but where's my money? The advantage with a direct investment platform like Energise Africa is that if your listeners go, have a look at our site, register so that you get the updates, and then we can let you know when new projects come along.
Today's sponsor is Energise Africa, the investment website where you can invest to support carefully chosen, innovative clean energy projects that change communities in sub-Saharan Africa and target attractive returns as well, all for investments of as little as £50. Energise Africa's goal is to mobilise millions of pounds to help African communities to build up their own prosperity, protect the planet, and achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals, all through people-powered impact investing. By backing pioneering clean energy companies, you can help reduce poverty, promote gender equality, fight climate change, and improve health and well-being across the region. Energise Africa has already raised over £47 million and made £29.5 million in repayments, while helping more than 750,000 people across 14 African countries access to the solar energy that can transform their homes, schools, and businesses. Past projects include bonds to fund thousands of solar lanterns and solar home systems to off-grid homes in the Democratic Republic of Congo, solar power systems for affordable housing developments in South Africa, and hundreds of electric motorcycles to transform communities in Kenya. Projected returns range from 6 to 8% per bond. Energise Africa is backed by UK Aid, Virgin Unite and the Good Energies Foundation, and it is an appointed representative of an FCA-regulated firm. Find out more by visiting energiseafrica.com or just follow the link in the show notes. You can sign up to get notified when new projects go live, register as a potential investor, and see some of the current projects you could invest in. Don't invest unless you're prepared to lose all the money you invest. Take 2 minutes to learn more at energiseafrica.com. Full terms and conditions apply.
You choose. You decide where your money goes. You decide whether you think reducing CO2 by funding electric forklift trucks in Nigeria is where you want to see your individual money going, or whether you want to fund electric motorbikes for boda riders in Kenya, or clean cook stoves, or green mini grids in Benin, or mini grids in the Congo, solar home systems for the poorest households of the Congo. You choose where your money goes. And then I think it's really important that people get told how their money is spent.
Yeah.
So we're setting out some updates today on our One Power bonds that we issued last year for the mini grids in Benin. And we've got lots and lots of photographic and direct community evidence and community reports of the progress of the project. So people can see how their money has been spent. And having that direct link to the project and being able to see after the event exactly how the money was spent, and then have the money repaid with interest because the project has been completed, it gives people a much more tangible connection to the project and to the impact.
Yeah, and I think, we definitely see that at Good With Money somewhere, that where you've got that direct link, you've got that better engagement, your lack of inertia and your engagement with your money and your understanding of its potential impact for good or less good is really something that is developing amongst UK financial services consumers and investors particularly. I guess increasing amounts of greenwash over the last few years have perhaps those direct impacts more attractive to investors. Would you agree, do you think?
I think so. I think greenwashing has been a problem. But the Financial Conduct Authority in the UK has taken a much, much stricter line on greenwashing since 2024. And we are held to very, very high standards on our impact reporting. So if somebody invests on the Energise Africa platform, we will report to them in real time on their individual portfolio in respect of the number of lives impacted and the kilos of CO2 saved. And we're very transparent on the platform about how we calculate these figures and how they're reported. So we can be very, very confident in terms of both the social and the environmental impact. And when an investor on the platform decides to make an investment, they can have absolutely no doubt about where their money has gone. And then they can see publicly available information on the progress that project has made.
Yeah.
So I can understand some people's reluctance when it comes to environmental project and investments, because I do think there have been issues in the past. But this is very direct, it's very transparent, and we're very confident in the numbers and the impact that we report. Highest social impact.
And you're getting a financial return as well, which is, it's a win-win, isn't it? So tell me a little bit about Energise Africa's investments are wrapped in something called the Innovative Finance ISA, the IFISA or the IFISA. How does that work exactly? Could you explain a little bit about, where that sits in an ISA portfolio, how it's different to other ISA products that people might be familiar with?
Absolutely. So an IFISA is an ISA like any other. You invest through a wrapper, and the returns that you make are then tax-free. Everybody has an ISA allowance of £20,000 a year, and that can be split across a number of different ISA products. So you can put some of your money into an IFISA and some money into a stocks and shares ISA, and you can mix and match. An IFISA is really designed, as you say, it's innovative finance. It's really designed for products like crowdfunding, like direct investment of bonds. So things that are a little bit different to ordinary stocks and shares or investment funds. The great thing about an IFISA is that once you've got access to an IFISA wrapper, such as the one Energise Africa provides, then you've got fantastic flexibility within it to choose the products and choose the investments that go within there. The allowance runs across the UK tax year, so everybody has their allowance now until the 5th of April, and then it will start again for the next year. It is different to a stocks and shares ISA in that with the stocks and shares ISA, the value of your investment can go up and down depending on market demand. What we're providing is a debt investment product, a bond. So therefore, when somebody invests on the Energise Africa platform, they will receive a bond, and that bond will pay a fixed rate of interest and then will repay on a set schedule.
Yeah.
So no matter how fantastically well the company does, you won't get more than 8% return. There's no big upside like you might get with stocks and shares. But equally, you're not going to be told, sorry, the market shifted and your bond is now worth far less.
Yeah.
So the risk and reward is different. The risk with an Energise Africa bond is more of a commercial one. You're lending money to a company and you're hoping that they're going to repay you. You're expecting that they're going to repay you. And generally speaking, in 90% of cases, the company will repay. But there are risks.
Yeah.
And people need to understand that these are high-risk investments, and people shouldn't invest more than they can afford to lose. When you lend money to a company that's trying to that is doing business in Africa, that company is exposed to some risks that you wouldn't face in the UK.
Yeah.
So there are risks to doing business in some African countries. We have a portfolio company that operates and has operated in the Congo for 12 years. There was an invasion earlier this year, and they had to move all of their staff out of their headquarters to a different city. That's not a risk you often associate with investing in corporate bonds. There are risks associated with, ironically associated with climate change. Yeah. Frequently, projects are more difficult to complete because the weather patterns are now more unpredictable. So when people wait till the end of the rainy season in order to transport their goods, they find out the rainy season has decided not to end when it's supposed to. Yeah. And it's decided to carry on, or the rainy season has decided not to arrive. We all read about the impacts of climate change. They are being felt more keenly in sub-Saharan Africa, and the weather patterns are changing. So there are risks to these investments, and we want to be completely upfront with people about that. And they're a different type of risk than you would have if you invest in an ISA and that money gets put into, say, UK stocks and shares.
Yeah. But again, it's about the broader benefits, isn't it? You know, you are helping play your part in combating climate change by supporting these projects, which essentially are helping to decarbonize Africa. So yes, risky because we're tackling globally a new set of climate risk, as it were, and we're not experienced in predicting those or managing those. And is there anything that investors should be aware of in terms of diversification? So presumably, if you are a typical UK investor, you perhaps wouldn't want to put your whole ISA allocation towards the products that Energise Africa is offering. Are there any other ways that investors can access the bonds that you offer that outside of an IFISA?
We have a lot of investors that invest in excess of the IFISA limit. So it's perfectly possible to invest in Energise Africa beyond the IFISA limit.
Yeah.
We also have a large number of investors that use their ISA allowance in a number of different ways. So they might have some of it set aside for impact investing, and some of it set aside for stocks and shares, and some set aside for government bonds or some very low risk investment. So people can decide to mix it and diversify it in different ways. The other thing I would say is that if people do want to use the Energise Africa platform in order to invest impactfully, then it makes sense to spread that investment across a number of different companies.
Yeah.
Because that then reduces the overall risk. And then if there is a delay on one investment, that can be offset by the interest payments on the other.
Yeah, amazing. So what kind of options are there available on the platform at the moment, or that are coming on? Are there any coming on board soon?
Yes. So at the moment, we have BizEdge is listed on the platform. BizEdge is definitely more at the CO2 end. If we look at all of our investments on a kind of CO2 social benefit spectrum, BizEdge supplies electric forklift trucks in Nigeria, and electric forklift trucks are a fantastic way of reducing CO2 emissions. Forklift trucks in warehouses go through an awful lot of diesel and run 24 hours a day.
Yeah, okay.
So a forklift with an electric vehicle is far more impactful than replacing a number of other vehicles.
Yeah.
A diesel forklift truck will emit over 100 tons of CO2 every year.
Wow.
So they are hugely damaging.
Yeah.
And because the warehouses they operate in tend to be in urban areas, there's also a big health issue in terms of the CO2 and because
air
diesel
pollution.
nitrous oxide.
Yeah.
So BizEdge, we've been working with BizEdge for years, 5 years now. Excellent repayment history, great business, operating in Nigeria, just expanded into Tanzania and South Africa, very, very successful. We have One Power is about to launch a bond. They're a mini-grid developer in Benin.
Yeah.
Developing a number of mini-grids there at the moment and all working very well. So they're coming to us for a third bond to develop 3 further grids in Benin. And we're hoping to be funding their projects in Zambia as well later in the year.
Oh, wow.
And then we have Zembo is about to launch, which is a electric vehicle manufacturer. They're new to the platform. They're in Uganda. I went to see them in Kampala last year. I was very, very impressed with the operation, with the technology. They have these wonderful fast charging battery swap stations. So the boda riders can literally pull in like a petrol station, pull a battery out, swap another one in less than 2 minutes. I did it myself.
Wow.
I didn't do it in less than 2 minutes, but I did it. Minutes takes practice. And they are having really fantastic social impact across Kampala and beyond in terms of the savings they're making for those boda riders and reduction in emissions.
Yeah.
And then the final one that's launching probably in a couple of weeks is a company called measurable, which is based in the Congo. And again, I was in the Congo in October and saw firsthand there's quite a lot of poverty and huge social challenges across the Congo. Very little access to electricity. This is a mini grid in a village called Dungu, which is in the Garamba National Park in northern Congo. So very, very remote area and a very difficult place for people to live. And this company is going to not only install the mini grid, but also provide the people within the village of Dungu with fridges, freezers, electric vehicles, electric grain mills, sewing machines, huge amounts of really productive equipment in order to improve people's lives, in order to increase their income, and in order to avoid huge amounts of unnecessary wasted effort, such as pounding grain by hand in the 21st century.
Yeah.
So they're very excited about the mini grid in Dungu. I think that those 3 will be live within the next couple of weeks. So again, I encourage people to go to Energise Africa, register, and then we can let you know when they come live.
Yeah.
And
they all sound just wonderful, so impactful. And again, the benefit is the transparency. You can really see what is how your money is being used. And you can really see how vital those solutions are. Couple more questions really quickly, Ray. So for anyone who thinks that they may want to invest, how easy is it to get started? What's the process, and what costs are involved?
So there are no costs involved. We don't charge investors anything. And there's no cost to register on the website. So no need to worry about that. The process is pretty straightforward. If you go to Energise Africa, first you need to register. So you go through a number of questions. We've got a normal identification process, but that's much smoother now that technology has improved.
Yeah.
And then you need to answer a few questions just to make sure that you understand the nature of the investments and that they're appropriate for you. And then there's a 24-hour cooling off period before you can actually invest.
Yeah.
Once that's passed, it's simply a matter of looking at the options on the site, downloading there's an offer document that accompanies every single bond, setting out exactly how the money will be used, setting out how the company will repay you.
Yeah.
And the impact of the project. And then if you see one that you like, you invest.
Yeah.
Investments start, every single one starts at £50. That's our lowest investment level for all of our bonds. We have always wanted to make this something for everybody and not just something for wealthy people. So it is as simple as that.
And so just to clarify then, you don't need to be a high net worth investor. You don't need to have a financial advisor. You just have to make sure that you are happy with the risk and be prepared to invest as much as you feel comfortable with.
Absolutely. However, if you do have a financial advisor, then there's no harm in directing the financial advisor to the Energise Africa website so that they can have a look and they can let you know what their thoughts are in terms of the risk involved and our investment track record, etc. So it's always worth carefully checking out and considering any investment.
Yeah.
So if you have a financial advisor, there's no harm in asking them.
Yeah, amazing. Brilliant. Okay, so moving on to you, just a couple of questions. How has running Energise Africa and perhaps your experiences to date shaped your own perspective on money and impact investing in particular?
I've traveled over the past couple of years. I've traveled in Africa more than I have previously. I've also gone to far more rural locations in Africa that most people don't travel to. So we've got an investment that we're trying to line up. It's still got some work to do to build a mini grid in Kenya in Kakuma refugee camp. People may have heard of the book The Lost Boys, which was based in Kakuma. It's one of the biggest refugee camps in the world, 320,000 people. And when you visit somewhere like that, it really brings home, firstly, how incredibly privileged and wealthy and comfortable we are in the Western world compared to many people in the world, and the challenging and difficult and incredibly hard circumstances that many, many people live in. The 320,000 people in Kakuma, not a single one of them is employed or is allowed to work or is allowed to keep livestock. So these are some of the poorest and most disadvantaged people on the planet. And when you visit places like that and then come back to our very comfortable Western world and read stories about the government reducing foreign aid and reducing direct investment, it's very, very difficult. So I think it's given me a perspective on the need that is out there that is probably entirely at odds with many of the decisions that have been made over recent years about the response that the Western world should be making to that need.
Yeah.
And I strongly believe that the answer is in ordinary people using a little bit of their capital in order to try and address this problem, because we now know that the governments of the Western world are not going to do it.
It's about the future that we as individuals want to see for the planet as a whole and for the global society, and how we can play a role in that, no matter how small, whether it is just £50, picking the project that you feel best aligned to, and playing your part, because as you say, the Western governments are not in the business of doing that. Finally, before I wrap up, Ray, I just wanted to ask, we always end with a Smug Money confession. We are called Smug Money, so that's about, how you feel good about your money, or what you do with your money that makes you feel good. A little bit cheeky play on Smug. So what do you feel good about how you use your own money and what you invest in personally? Is that on a financial basis, or, do you obviously feel incredibly heartened by the work that you do with Energise Africa? So, I guess you've got a lot to feel smug about.
I try not to feel smug. I think going back to what we were just talking about, the scale of the problem
Yeah.
is so huge.
Yeah.
I think it's very, very hard to feel smug.
Yeah.
I do invest on the Energize Africa platform, and I directly hold bonds in, I think, all of the companies that have issued bonds ever since I started at the company. In fact, before I started at the company, I was an investor on the platform.
Mm-hmm.
So it is an important way for me personally. There are things that I feel very unsmug about in terms of how I and how we spend our money.
Mm-hmm.
And probably the biggest one is transport and travel. We operate across a number of different countries in Africa. One of the really important elements of what we do is we go to visit projects and we see what's happening on the ground in order to understand the risks and in order to protect our investors' money. But that means that my carbon footprint from flying is something I am deeply ashamed and embarrassed about. And I would love to find a way to reduce that. We've recently opened an office in Nairobi, so we have people now in Kenya who can cover Western Africa for far fewer air miles than I would.
Great, yep.
And that will help. But it is one of the things I feel very unsmug about is the mission that we're on to reduce CO2, and hopping on an aeroplane to try and fulfill that mission.
Yeah.
We need to find a better way of doing things, but I haven't quite solved that one yet.
No, there are several developments in progress, aren't they? But I'm not sure we're going to solve that problem in the short-term future.
Not in this episode.
No. Maybe next time. We'll have you back in a year. Excellent. It's been absolutely fabulous to have you on, Ray. I think really, really thought-provoking for me to listen to some of your stories and the richness of the impact that you're having, that Energise Africa is having, and just how vital support for those projects really, really is. The real world impact that is being created and seriously life-changing solutions being deployed across Africa. For listeners interested in learning more about Energise Africa, impact investing and innovative finance ISAs, we will be including links in the show notes. I just wanted to close by saying thank you, huge thank you to you, Ray, CEO of Energise Africa. Thank you for coming on to Smug Money.
Lisa, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure talking to you.